we have listened to her, her achievements, her role, and how she is working in that country. All are you aware that Sikhism, after Guru Nanak Sahib founded it, first spread to Afghanistan. Afghanistan was a total Hindu country, then a Buddhist. The Sikhism spread there till Islam took over, and the Sikhs were the main traders of Kabul. All three cities, Ghazni, Kandahar and Kabul, were totally Sikh countries. I was in Kabul, this Karta Parwan, name of the Mahalla. The best area is after a Karta Parwan. There is a hill named after Guru Nanak. So Kabul, Afghanistan was all a trading for the Sikhs. But Taliban sent them out. Those Afghanis came out. It took for me and 7-8 years how to help the Sikh refugees who came from Kabul. And only recently an act has been passed that they will be given citizenship. I have been fighting in Parliament everywhere how to help them. There are about 50,000 Sikhs living in this. I got a sanction from the government that all Afghanis living in America, England, they were not allowed visas to come to India. That was sanctioned so that now they can exchange between themselves and how to get their properties, but still they are suffering. But if you go to London today, the South Hall, they used to say is a Sikh area, but it is Sikh area because of the Sikhs who came from Kabul. The entire bazaar is now owned by Afghani Sikh with black turban. That is, wherever they go, they have flourished and they are 100% Pakka Sikh, wherever either they are America here. So this is credit to them. Now I respectfully invite Sir Montek Singh Ahluwalia, each one of you know, for 10 years in India, 10 years, he is the man who handled entire Indian economy. He is the man who sanctioned billions and billions of dollars of the total India's money to the states. Every chief minister of every state has to come to him and get sanction for the state. One man who did so efficiently, who did so well, not a single complaint in 10 years. And the man, so much respect he earned for us, and this turban shined every day because every day he was in news, giving one sanction or that. So luckily he is here with us, and I request him that he should now on this seminar give his thought on this subject. Sir Montek Singh Ahluwalia.
Okay. Well, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sir Tarlochan Singh Ji, thank you very much for saying all these nice things about me. Quite undeserved, but we'll pass over that since we don't have too much time. But I do want to say that it's a great honor to be here. It's not good? Okay. I was saying, oh yeah, much better. It's a great honor to be here for the 50th anniversary of the Sikh Foundation. You know, I've known Narinder Singh Ji for several years and always admired him. In a way, I could not resist the temptation to speak on a subject of role models because really he is a role model. And when I say that he's a role model, not just for the Sikh community, I mean, he's a role model for the whole community. Terrific achievements in the technical space, converting that into material success, and maybe what is most difficult is using that material success to spread so much other in different areas, most of all the arts. I was particularly impressed when I met him with the energy with which he had started the whole process of collection of Sikh arts and art objects. And you know, in the Victoria and Albert Museum, I was telling him this, that when we went and saw the Arts of the Sikh Kingdoms exhibition, there was a nice cabinet, which two of the really nice pieces of jewelry, one was Ranjit Singh's ring, which said, lent by the Kapani collection, and the other one was a ruby lent by Queen Elizabeth. So that's not a bad sort of place to be sharing. So Dr. Kapani, many, many congratulations. And I do hope that, you know, you will be celebrating other anniversaries of the Sikh Foundation, and we'll be seeing better and better things happening as a result. Now, you know, I don't know really, I don't regard myself as a role model because, you know, unlike doctors, when a doctor, and all of you, most of you are doctors, when a doctor succeeds, you know, whatever he may think or she may think, but they're able to point, as some people vary, as Jayavanji pointed out, there are lots of people that you've actually helped. So, I mean, I'm afraid economists really can't do that. And you know, for everyone you've helped, there's probably somebody who's complaining, because no change can take place without some people making progress, but you know, other people getting hurt. So we are in a very funny sort of world. We take the sort of compliments as they come, but we're very different from doctors. However, I want to mention one thing, and that is a lot of this conference has talked about Ranjit Singh. And, you know, quite rightly, I mean, the focus has been on the bits of Ranjit Singh, his contribution to the arts, and we've seen a lot of that. But, you know, I think that it's very important to look at him as a role model for systems of change. I think Dr. Kang made this point, that in the end, if you want to see some progress, systems have to change. I mean, certainly for a great artist or a great swimmer and so on, maybe the systems are not that important. It's the individual ability to get to the very top. But in anything broader, I mean, things are only achieved when a system changes. And I think the interesting thing about Ranjit Singh is he actually changed the system. I was talking to Jean-Marie Lafont, whose work has made me much more aware of this. But you know, Ranjit Singh recognized that individual bravery and strength are really not the key things in military prowess. I mean, what he did was he modernized his army. And secondly, he was the first globalizer, because he just looked abroad. I mean, he said, what's going on? I mean, I'm opposing the British, so the French are a natural source of support. And he brought in French generals who had worked under Napoleon and totally modernized his army. So that system change, almost no other, maybe Tipu Sultan in the south did more, did similar things, but nobody else modernized the army. They more or less carried on the way they were doing. The two other things are very important. One is that he didn't run a Sikh kingdom. I mean, only 16% or so of the population of Punjab at that time was actually Sikh. So here you had a Sikh emperor or Maharaja running a Sikh, Hindu, and Muslim kingdom. And what is more, they were represented in the equivalent of his cabinet. The other story about the turbans in the cabinet, he had lots of Hindus in his cabinet, he had lots of Muslims in his cabinet, and indeed in the army. So running an inclusive system was really one of his great achievements. It's underemphasized because we always think of first Sikh empire, this, that, and the other. I think it was the first Punjabi empire with a Sikh emperor, and he knew how to run a multicultural system. You know, I find this very important. I live in India. That is our goal and objective. And the inclusiveness of a social system is absolutely central to actual achievement. If the system is not inclusive, it is simply not going to achieve, and Ranjit Singh understood that. You know, the other thing is, on a purely personal plane, which I find very empathetic, you know, he was an intensely curious guy. He did not have the approach that I know everything. Every foreigner who ever met Ranjit Singh has recorded that he's intensely curious, that when you go there, he asks you about your country, what do you fellows do, what goes on there, all sorts of detailed questioning. And frankly, I think in the process, I think it's very relevant for India because, you know, until about 20 years ago, we were very close. We were not actually looking abroad. And in some ways, that has changed. I feel very pleased to have had some role in that change, and I'll come to that if I have time for a few more minutes. But, you know, as we celebrate Ranjit Singh, let us remember that for people at the top to ask questions implies that they don't know everything. And in any system, if that tradition or that culture spreads through the system, then individuals will also question what is happening, question what their bosses are doing. And if you ask me, half the problem in India is that we have far too feudal and intellectual instinct, even in our universities. I mean, this is a big problem. This is what needs to change. So in a sense, we don't have to necessarily look abroad. We have to highlight and emphasize those aspects of our own tradition which actually bring this out. So since this is a conference where Ranjit Singh played a very big role, I thought I would bring in these aspects which were not emphasized so far. Let me now turn a little bit to the more contemporary things that perhaps some of you are interested, which is really what's going on and what I've been able to do in India. You know, I had always wanted to work I wanted to work as an economist in India. But obviously to acquire skills, you go abroad. I went to Oxford a few years before Sunny Anand did, but it's very nostalgic to see those pictures of you matriculating. Somewhere in my album, I must have a picture of me matriculating in front of those gates also. I decided that I would do some postgraduate work. Originally, I was going to join the IAS right at the beginning. But when I did postgraduate work, I also realized that I don't want to be just a civil servant, a generalist. I want to be an economist. That meant having to get experience in economics. Then I joined the World Bank. It's a good way of getting experience about what's happening in the world. I thought originally I would just go back after 3 or 4 years, but I met my wife Isha, who's here, and you'll be seeing her later. So we got married, we had one kid. So things took a little longer before we returned. But in the end, we did go back in 1979. And pretty much since then, I've been in different parts of the government. And I've been fortunate that I was in India at a time when India was beginning to change. I mean, that is the period when we started to end this closed economy mentality and started to open up. Now, you know, in my view, we should have done it much faster. There's no question. I mean, it looks good at any given point to say, certainly during the last 10 years of Manmohan Singh's government, and that may be continuing even now, the economy has been growing quite well. But, you know, this is from a very low level. So we are what you might call a fast-growing country, which has just got out of being a low-income country into the bottom of being a middle-income country. So you're all living in a high-income country, and you're living in probably the highest income of the high-income countries. So when you look at India from California, I mean, the gap is enormous. The difference is that if you had had someone talking to you about India 25 years ago, the growth performance at that time didn't hold out that much hope. I think now the growth performance is much, much better. Huge challenges ahead. I don't share the view that just because you did well in the last 10 years, you're going to do well in the next 10 years. I mean, the truth of the matter is the world has changed. The nature of the challenges have changed. How we respond to those challenges is not yet clear. It's a huge challenge for any leadership. But, you know, I would just say one or two things. That is, when you work in government, you achieve change not because of what you do. You achieve change if you manage to change enough people's minds so that that minimum group of people who have to think differently begin to think differently. And how you change their minds is some combination of intellectual argument, pure manipulation, intellectual deceit, PR, whatever you like. And very often, I think there are things that you know, but you don't let on. I mean, for example, if you go before any parliament and say, we're growing at 5%, this is no good, I want to grow at 8%. It sounds very good. Everybody in his mind thinks that, you know, well, instead of growing at 5%, I'll grow at 8%, that's good. But the truth of the matter is, do we really know what is necessary to grow at 8%? The short answer is we don't. I mean, doctors are much more aware of the problems of diagnosing things, and nowadays particularly, since they've all come to the conclusion. And it's one of the big changes, by the way, in medicine, I find, is that doctors no longer do what, when I was young, we thought they would do, which is that look at you and give you a little puri and say, well, you just have this and you'll be all right. Now, I mean, there are multiple causes, never sure what combination of causes leads to what, etc. And then they give you things and they say, well, you know, this is probabilistic. I mean, you know, everything has negative effects, so if you do this, there's X percent probability you'll be cured, Y percent probability that you may be hurt. X is much larger than Y. There is an alternative combination, and now that's interesting, because there may be a lower probability of being cured, but an even lower probability of being hurt. And then they say, we want you to make an informed choice. Now, you know, it's difficult enough to do that if you're healthy. It's extremely difficult to do if you're not well. So economists are actually worse than that. The economists know less about an economy than a doctor does. But you have to persuade people in parliament all the same. Okay, trust me, this is good, because it worked in Korea or because it worked somewhere else. You know, very similar kind of problems. But the biggest difficulty really is that no growth process, any growth process is a process of structural change. I mean, no economy grows because it's got something and instead of growing like this, it'll grow like that. It grows because you are unleashing those parts of the economy that are going to be dynamic. And when that happens, they're going to compete against the ones that are not dynamic. The second lot temporarily will get hurt until they work out that, listen, unless they work harder, they won't do well. So in a well-structured system where, you know, those who are really getting hurt get helped, those who have the capacity to do better are helped to do better, those who have the capacity already to do well are helped to do well. Now, this is a very, very complex thing. And, you know, I don't think that governments are organized even to think about that. I'm not just talking about India, it's also true elsewhere in the world. I mean, most governments work in silos. Minister of Health works on health, somebody else works on something else. These two things interact with each other all the time. So, you know, working in government and trying to get change is, I think in terms of challenges, huge. And I must say that I feel quite privileged. I'm writing about a book about my own experiences. So I promised to send copies to the Sikh Foundation as and when it gets published. And, you know, as I'm writing, I keep changing my own mind, because it's like, it's very easy to describe what you were thinking. But really the important thing is when you look back, were you thinking the right thing? Do you still think that that was important? That is not very easy to say. But you know, the good news is, I mean, when I got back to India in 1979, if I had made a list of the things that we were doing in the control economy, having come from outside, it was quite clear that this is ridiculous. And, you know, it looked so difficult to get any change made. But when I look back, I mean, the fact is that things have changed. And that is the important thing, that change is possible. It has been happening. And, you know, in a free society, once people sense what is possible, they're just not going to settle for anything less. I mean, the Indian economy has over 10, 12 years grown at about 7.5%. It may slow down for 1 year or two, doesn't matter. But, you know, any government that wants to remain in power will more or less have to deliver something of that order. This is one point. And I know I'm kind of in my last 10 seconds. Let me make my last point. You know, my last point is, and this is something that everybody has to take credit for, not any one person, that, you know, in India, our politics is very contentious in the sense that whenever somebody is in power, the opposition is opposing, which is good, that's democratic. But, you know, we have managed to have a lot of continuity in policy. I mean, the economic, in a way, the beginnings of change came in the 1980s. They were greatly accelerated when Dr. Manmohan Singh was a finance minister and Narasimha Rao was a prime minister in the 90s. Then they got a boost when Dr. Manmohan Singh, and actually also when Vajpayee was prime minister, he moved it forward. When the left coalition before Vajpayee was in power, they also moved it forward. Nobody, while every political party described the other fellows as a disgrace and doing the wrong thing, when they came to power, they did not reverse what they were doing. Sometimes they renamed it. That's okay. I mean, that's part of politics. But, you know, more or less the same thing has happened. And the country has done well. So I think under this great noise of Indian politics, there is a certain amount of continuity. And, you know, a big country like India does require a little bit of gradualism, not too much. I think we are too gradual, but it does require a little bit. And it requires a politics that ensures continuity. So I think with those words, let me thank you once again for inviting me. I think Siddhartha Lochan Singh said this is the first Sikh gathering. I've attended meetings here before, but not a Sikh meeting. So I assure you that if you invite me again, I'll be very happy to come. So thank you.